Hi, I'm Paul Stringfellow, Technical Director here at Gardner Systems. And we've just come out of an event, our COVID-19, what we've learned from COVID-19 forum event. It's not an event we were, for those not fortunate enough to attend, it was an event that we were able to stream. It's not one that we're going to be sharing a video of afterwards either, because it was very much an open debate, an open forum for those attendees to share some of their experiences over the last 12 months as they've dealt with the changes that we've all seen in our work environments because of COVID-19 and the restrictions that we've had placed upon us here in the UK. But what I wanted to do was kind of give, for those who've not been able to attend, a little bit of a sense of what was discussed and a little bit of a flavour of some of the topics that were brought up, because there was lots of really fascinating and very open conversation. So to do that, I'm joined by our CEO at Gardner Systems here, Frank Coward, and our co-host for the event, Ian Hawkins from Liverpool City Region Combined Authority. So, gentlemen, thanks for joining me. I'll throw it out to you two straight away. Maybe start with you, Ian. Actually, what was your what was your view of the event? What did you feel about it? What were some of the things that stood out for you?
Okay, thanks, Paul. Yeah, found the event very useful. We've had a couple of events, a number of events, and they always seem to go the same way. Very interesting. The thing that really stands out for me in this type of event is people are open and honest. I think you touched on that, Paul. There were a couple of subjects that were covered that people were sort of bearing the soul on some of the things that have happened over the last 12 months, and it was nice that there was an environment where people could open out and talk about that experience, but also to offer advice for others who may or may not have experienced that type of thing. Obviously, we gave a run through of what had happened at our authority during the COVID sort of 12 months. And it hasn't been easy. And I think it was interesting to see that very similar experiences from everybody involved in the call, slight variations, but it hasn't been the best 12 months in an IT manager's life. Let's not be daft about it. But it was nice that people could be open and honest and discuss that and start to formulate plans and start to talk about, well, what's next? What will the next iteration of, what will the next 12 months look like? Hopefully post COVID. So I found it really interesting that people were comfortable enough to have those discussions, to learn from each other's mistakes. And again, I said about some of the mistakes we made, but be able to have those honest conversations. So found the session very, very productive.
Yeah, and I share that, Ian. I think that, what was really nice was the candid nature of the discussions. And I said in the intro that we couldn't broadcast the event because
Yeah.
that was very much what we wanted. But, and I thought it was interesting, there was so much similarity regardless of the organisations, because there was people there who were from quite small companies to very large, well-known organisations that people who were perhaps watching this will certainly recognise if they came across them. And I thought that similarity was really interesting. And Frank, I don't know about you, was that a similar kind of thing that stood out for you, or was there something different?
Well, yeah, I think it certainly did. I mean, I think everybody's aware. I'm a big fan of our sub-region and what goes on in it, and the I like the idea that people from that area have their own expertise. They have their knowledge base. They're not dependent on external sources. I think what was really interesting was, as you say, is right from small enterprises through to some very, very large ones. It was pretty much the same in that I think most people have felt a weariness now over the last 13 months that they were challenged with this quite seriously on at least two occasions, having to go from on-premises solutions usually to people based at home. That meant, of course, that whilst IT was always going to change and morph into something else, we were all having to change and adapt far more quickly than we would have liked. And we were also pushed into this, well, how effective is it? And what's the threat landscape look like now? Because suddenly the perimeter has opened up for everybody. And we've seen lots of media about the threats which have grown exponentially. So how do we deal with all of that? And how do we look after the end users? Because, of course, I think I've spoken to Ian about this myself. There's an awful lot of people who work in enterprises who are working off a kitchen table or in a bedroom or an attic somewhere. It's not ideal. And the end user experience has been quite testing for a lot of people. And equally, it's now 13 months since this started, and the people that we all answer to are not going to accept the fact any longer that we weren't prepared for this. Perhaps that was a very good reason last March in 2020 to say, well, I wasn't expecting this, and I'm having to learn new ideas and cope. But I think we've all had time to assimilate that now, and that's the challenge, isn't it? Is what is around the corner for everybody. And I think, as Ian said, what we noticed was that pretty much everybody had the same response, which is, I don't know, but I'm treading carefully, but I am actually treading more quickly because I've got to.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
I think that kind of really jumped out at me as well. That I thought that even kind of 13 months in or so, as we are with this changing environment that we've all found ourselves in, I thought it was really interesting that I don't think anybody really felt that they had all the answers. I think for everybody it was something that they're still struggling to deal with. And Ian, actually, I kind of asked you this because it was something I think you touched on. You presented a little piece on, as you talked about kind of your own at the combined authority, your own experiences. Now, I thought one of the things that was interesting was people's thoughts going forward, and some of the things that they've still to try and figure out how they're going to deal with. Was that again something that stood out for you, or was there something else that you'd like to take away from the event, something that you think is going to be useful for you going forward?
Yeah, it definitely was a key theme for myself. I think we what was quite clear is everybody was planning to do the things they were going to do. So Microsoft 365, etc., etc. We were all, in my instance, we were part way through that journey, finished our proof of concept. What I think happened for absolutely everybody is that just exploded. Everything was accelerated, whether it be 365, Teams, etc., etc. Getting hold of loads and loads of laptops as quickly as you can, begging, stealing, and borrowing to get hold of them. So I think everybody went through that phase of just reacting, and it went amazingly well. I think for most people, there were local issues, but it went pretty well. I did use an analogy toward the end, and not comparing ourselves to NHS in any way, shape, or form, what they've been through in the last 12 or 15 months. But I think we're now getting to the stage where people, everybody was congratulating, well done, IT, you've made 400 people be able to work from home almost overnight. That's all great. But we're now being asked, well, that's fine, but what about your projects that you put on hold? What about this? What about that? And I think it's almost, I think I phrased it that I feel like we're all applauding the NHS right at the start, but now people are saying, well, why is my routine operation being delayed? And it almost some of that work's being forgotten. But I think that the problem that's facing us all is what's new ways of working going to look like. Frank touched upon our threat landscape is much, much bigger now because you've got 500, 600, 700 endpoints that can be attacked and used as attack vectors against you. So I think we need to get that straight. We need to ensure that we can give a safe working environment, whether it be working from home or in the office. So DSE checks for home workers, all that type of stuff. And again, we're all facing exactly the same problem, and that's what really interests me about this type of session that we've had, because you have got small private companies, you've got large local authorities, you've got health, you've got education, you've got all the sectors in there, but we're all grappling with exactly the same thing as what everybody keeps talking about, the new normal, the new ways of working. What's that really going to look like? Because nobody, it's not been long enough yet to say, well, that's the direction we must all go in. Some organisations saying don't come in an office again. Some organisations are saying get yourself back in an office. I don't think there's enough evidence to say which way is right. Likely it's going to be a hybrid, but it needs to be evidence-based, and it intrigues me how all that's going to go, and it's really interesting to hear other people's thoughts on it.
Well, I think picking up on that, some of the things that came across were the technology poverty that a lot of society is experiencing.
Yeah.
And it's not just people who, even if machines were available, just can't afford them. There is actually a technology poverty in terms, it's just not available, is it? We've seen, shortages of chips because shipping wasn't moving the way it normally would. then it was difficult to get hold of stuff. Some of our colleagues who are expats who joined in on the day, who are in Kuwait and the Seychelles, they described the fact that they just can't get hold of spares at the moment. And I think it's all that too, isn't it? It's almost like the theme of vaccines, saying, well, unless you make it available to the wider world, then we'll never get immunity from COVID. Well, the same thing goes for technology. We can't afford to leave anybody behind with this, really. And I think that equally, it irks me at times when you see technology companies flooding out technology to businesses that can't really assimilate it. The users can't really adopt it, and it doesn't work as well as it should. And it's all the more difficult because you're trying to do that at arm's length. So there's all those issues now about not only identifying what the technology should be, but how do you make it usable and easily assimilated by somebody. I mean, one of the comments we came up with, you can't actually walk up to a help desk anymore, can you, and say, excuse me, can you show me how I do this? You might well be offline working off your kitchen table. It's not the same anymore.
And I think if I was kind of to sum up my view of it, succinctly as I can, that cultural thing was a big part. I think it was, something that was touched on a couple of times. It was organisations with a culture of adapting that found adapting easier, not surprisingly, but it was also those kind of cultural shifts in terms of the way we think about technology, the way that we interact with our employees, our staff, our customers, and appreciating. And maybe interestingly for the technology sector as well, that kind of shift from how do we make technology more humane? How do we bring more of the human experience? Because you touched on it, Ian, that idea that what's it going to look like when some are in an office and some aren't? How do we replicate that kind of touchy-feely office experience where we can interact with people? So, well, look, gents, we didn't. I know we didn't want to spend too long kind of wrapping this up, and we just wanted a kind of a 10-minute view of the event. But before I go, just maybe ask each of you, just kind of in a sentence or two, if there was one thing that you were taking away from the event. What would that be, Ian? How about you?
I think that comforting feeling that we're all in this together, we're all prepared to share our experiences, and you don't quite feel as alone as you sometimes do in this industry.
Yeah, I think that's a fair point. And Frank, was there one thing that you took away from the event?
Well, the thing that hit me quite forcefully was immediately after the event, one of the delegates, who's a director of a major European bank, emailed me and said the difference between these events and other events is that humanity, is that sense of community that we've got at these events. And I think that's the thing I'd like to take away from this, is that we've managed to put humanity into this technology. Some of the hybrid solutions we've got are better than the ones we had over a year ago. And I think if in 2021 and 2022, I would like to try and keep the best that we've evolved by living in the shop, and actually dispense with some of the things which we probably should have dispensed with without COVID to persuade us.
Yeah, I think that's a very fair point. But well, Ian, Frank, thanks for spending 10 minutes or so with me just to kind of give your views of the event that we've had. I think it was a really successful event, and in no small part down to the effort that both of you put into to making it happen. So thank you for that, and thanks for joining me to give us a little bit of a wrap up. And for people watching the video, if that sounds like the kind of event you'd like to be a part of in the future, then do check out the Gardner Systems website for our next events and see how you can be part of it. But for now, Frank, Ian, thanks very much.
Thank you.